Jones here. I'm putting this up on YouTube before this technically goes live tomorrow on Facebook because I wanted to do a test run of my software and stuff, and I was going to put it on my YouTube anyway, so this is a way of me to do that, a way of me doing that. So I hope you enjoy this long-form masterclass with myself and Brandon Coleman, the great guitarist from Cincinnati. I went down there to record in his studio, and it was a lot of fun, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's get this started. One sec. There we go. Whoops, I did the wrong file. See, this is why I'm doing this as a test. Sorry. Here we go. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. First of all, this is Brandon Scott Coleman.
Hey, everybody.
We are in Cincinnati right now. I'm not looking at any camera right now.
We got 2 cameras.
Looking dead center to nowhere. Looking in the blank ether that is life right now. We're at Golden Mean, which is Brandon's amazing studio space in downtown Cincinnati. I'm very happy to be here recording and playing and just doing our thing together.
Yeah, man.
So, well, maybe why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Oh, yeah. So, I am, my name's Brandon Coleman. You heard that already. That's the first part about myself that's important. But I've been a professional musician for about 15 years. Been gigging that long, but I've played for maybe 22 years now. Started playing when I was about 10. Went to school for jazz music, at Morehead State in Kentucky, and then grad school in Louisville, Kentucky. Stayed with a lot of great musicians, got to play with a lot of great people. But I've made my living here in Cincinnati, doing my music, running a recording studio, and making different aspects of jazz music happen in that regard. So teaching, producing, and mixing, all that stuff. So and playing with Zakk. And that's right. Super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. As you heard and saw, we were playing a blues. That's a 5-spot blues by the great Thelonious Monk. And we kind of wanted to open up with the blues because it's such a ubiquitous and idiomatic form in jazz, but also obviously in blues as its own genre, and it's permeated in a lot of other genres as well. And I think it's a really important form that all musicians aspiring to play in most capacities should know about the blues form. So maybe we can kind of talk about a couple things about the blues. We were playing, this is a B-flat blues, very basic B-flat blues that Monk wrote. And maybe we can just kind of do a couple choruses, and I'll maybe highlight one aspect of playing really simply, which I like to show people, is just using even just one note. Sometimes you can just solo with one note. So I'm going to do 2 choruses of that maybe with you comping, and then I'll talk more about it.
Sick.
Cool. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. So in those 2 choruses, I use only one note, B flat, which is just the root of this bass, or of this blues, right? The key of the blues. But if you notice, there was a couple things that I did with that one note. Maybe could you maybe highlight a couple things that you maybe heard?
Yeah, I think Zakk was being very rhythmically deliberate, since you're limited choice of notes, being very rhythmically active, highlighting certain syncopations, being creative with just the rhythmic aspect and articulation, dynamics. Those are the levels of music that you can access when your notes are limited.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. The cool thing about one note is that it's not, and especially on guitar, we're kind of lucky that we can play one note even in the same octave in a lot of places, which gives a different timbre. But even on different instruments, you can find different ways of playing a note. That's different octaves, all the places on the instrument or the guitar. Then also, of course, dynamics, like Brandon said. We have the whole range of dynamic, and then also timbre, and especially on guitar, just by moving our pick, we can get a different tone out of it, and you can get tone and timbre through your instrument in a variety of ways through different techniques. So maybe how about you do the same thing, and I'll comp for you.
All right.
Sound good?
Sick.
Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that was awesome. And just in our two examples, it's so cool to see how two different people approach playing the same exact note on the same instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I think Zakk's saying a lot of good things here. Just as much it opens up your creative part of your mind when you limit yourself to a certain palette, and because if we're overwhelmed with like a full scale in our mind or a full set of notes, sometimes it's our first inclination, especially on guitar, is to just run up and down it. You know, we want to start jumping around and doing cool things, but you really get to the creative, artistic part of your mind, which is one of the biggest aspects of jazz that's important, is the artistic expression when you limit yourself to those simple, choices. And then, but that's not to say like, oh, I want to sound crazy and awesome. But the reason certain great musicians sound crazy and awesome is because they learned how to manipulate simple choices and then string them together in very articulate and artistic fashion. So familiarizing yourself with how to distribute these notes, simple choices in an expressive way will really add up to some excellent improvisation later on in your career. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Nail on the head.
Yeah, man.
So why don't we continue a little bit and just add one note?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess it can be up to you what the other note is. So we're going to improvise using the same B flat plus one other note.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you go first?
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. So what was your second note?
I chose E.
Why? What made you choose that note?
I think partially because we played a Thelonious Monk tune earlier. It's kind of a tip of the hat to one of Monk's favorite intervals, the diminished fifth.
The tritone, exactly.
Yeah.
I think he even has that that blues tune called Raised Fourth.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
just that the whole
Just
time,
that
or whatever
the
it
whole
is.
time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of cool things you can do with that note, I believe. And from my perspective, it's fun if you, especially when you're limiting yourself to these simple amounts of notes, is really mentally thinking how you can justify that note over whatever chord the accompaniment is playing. And it's pretty interesting how even on situations where it might be a wrong note, it can be justified with a few simple mathematical maneuvers. For those of you who already are pretty beefed up on your theory, that's a pretty fun exercise to do. But for those of you who are not, it's also really good for your ear to start hearing those things, because in jazz we're dealing with a lot of different colors on chords. Some things might sound alien or like dissonant, but the more you get used to it and the more you play it and deliver it with confidence, you get used to those choices, I think. And just listening to great musicians, great recordings of the past, listening to somebody like Thelonious Monk really use that interval or his other interval, like the minor seconds and stuff.
Absolutely.
Whole steps. Really kind of gets your ear used to hearing those kind of things. So, use your ears.
Well, and especially in a blues, or some tonality, sonority that you can really get away with that blues sound. using those blue notes over, whatever, harmony you put underneath in this in the jazz blues or progression, you can get away with it because it just is within that entire key. So that's basically just, you're able to remove the chord sometimes and just play in the sonority, which is awesome. Maybe I'll do a couple courses and I'll choose 2 notes and we'll move
Beautiful.
on. Okay, cool.
1, 2, 1, 2,
Cool. I made one mistake, sorry. I played a C, but my second note was D flat, the minor third. And again, if we're kind of zooming out and talking about B flat blues, most often you're going to be told you want to play your B flat blues scale, right? Whoops. Or the B flat minor pentatonic. So in this case, I just chose another note that's within that basic tonality, the D flat, which is that flat third. And again, like we mentioned, the E is also part of that blues scale, so almost all those notes, especially the 1 and the 3 and the flat 5, are kind of going to work over everything. It just sounds great. And you get that bluesy sonority.
That's right.
As my jazz textbook would say.
Oh yeah, bluesy sonority.
That's right.
We have a lot of fun, if you can't tell.
Yes, we do. We're very fortunate to have Brandon not only in the state of Ohio, but in the state of the universe. He's a great guy and great player and brings a lot of levity to
Well, as soon as they
crazy
open that
times.
portal, man, I'm out.
Yeah, he's waiting to leave this planet, that's for sure. He's been biding his time. awesome.
Nice.
We do that all day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Excuse me. Well, during our little break, you had mentioned that you wanted to play this tune for a specific reason. So maybe you want to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you unfamiliar with that tune, that's There Will Never Be Another You. Great jazz standard. And like many jazz standards of the era, it features movement through largely diatonic harmony, but it remains interesting harmonically speaking. And for those of us who are just getting into theory, kind of start to digest a lot of scales and chords and how those chords and scales interact with one another. But sometimes there can be a pitfall in that every time we see a chord on a lead sheet, our brain starts to think, I got to think of a brand new scale for this whole scenario. Otherwise, I'm not going to sound jazzy at all. But one thing that's really cool about this tune is, for the most part, it's very typical, like old school resolutions in the key of E flat. There's not much in the way of outside, unless we choose to add something new, which we did a few times there. So what's cool about that is it's a great vehicle to teach you how to use your ear to figure out how diatonic harmony moving affects what notes are colorful or gain weight or gravity in the major scale. All of us should know our major scale by this point: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And when we're playing it over an E flat chord, we have typical notes that are important. We have the root, the third, the fifth, and in jazz we have the seventh. That fancy boy right there. But if we look at the chords through this tune, most of them can be explained diatonically. E flat major 7, that's the 1 chord. I could think of this D half diminished to G7 as a 2-5 to C minor, but also that's the 7 in E flat major, and this is a 5 of 6. This is what we call a secondary dominant chord. For those who are already beefed up on their theory, you probably know that term, but what that means, it's a dominant chord leading to a new tonic. So we can describe that as the 5 of 6. So we're still in E flat major, but we're just kind of highlighting C minor here. Then we go down and do a 2-5 of 4, A flat major. And that just takes us to the first half of the first round of the tune, and already we're going through some pretty cool colors. Ear-wise, we can hear some nice color shifts, but you can literally play over that entire thing with an alarm clock off of an iPhone. This will be where Zakk splices the footage. So yeah, where were we?
You were saying that you could just play the major scale over that.
Yeah,
as part of the tune.
Yeah, you can play E flat major scale over pretty much the whole tune.
Yep.
So let's do this. Me and Zakk will both take turns.
Okay.
We'll comp simply so you can hear exactly. We're not going to do our crazy interaction right now. We're going to play just basic chords, and then the other one's going to just play a nice melodic solo using E flat major scale, nothing more.
We're doing the whole form?
Let's do like the first A section, without
the first half.
Yeah. The first half.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to go first or me?
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah. Sounds good. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Super nice. And you notice how singable that sounds. And I think a really important thing to take note of is this is a good training exercise to teach yourself to hear melodies in the major key. For guitar players, sometimes that's hard. I know a lot of you play different instruments. Sometimes it's hard for a guitar player to hear a melody in the major key because we start off playing rock. We want to hear melodies out of a minor pentatonic thing. We're so used to certain maneuvers. But if you listen to vocalists sing, the bulk of pop music, major scale harmony, being able to craft a melodic statement is a very strong skill to be able to have. I'll do the same thing. And I'm gonna do one little extra thing. I'm gonna try to sing it while I play it. I think if you can do that with your instrument, that's important. If you play an instrument that you got to blow into, obviously you can't do that, but you can kind of imagine, kind of thinking one step ahead, being able to mentally imagine that note, and it really helps you kind of stay focused on the melodic aspect of improvisation. Let's try it.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, slap her off there.
2, 1, 2, absolutely.
And it's really fun to do. If you can do that while you play your instruments, really fun challenge. Even if you're not like a great singer, it's really good to it helps you mentally prepare and be deliberate about your note choice. I think it's a really good exercise to be able to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What if we do, or what do you have? Do you have an idea?
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, let's try to learn how to make a lot of money off jazz music.
Jury's out. This is gonna cut to like 60 years in the future, like destitute. We don't even have to go 60. Go 2 months from now.
2 months from now. Oh man. Let's see. I was gonna say, let's talk about some of the outside chords that are outside.
Yeah.
So here we go. I'll give you a little splice point, so we don't scare the children. So we can talk about now. There's a few chords in the tune that are technically outside of the key of E flat major, and while they may seem outside, they're not that outside. And I'd like to talk about ways you can figure out what to play over those chords. One of the first chords in this tune that stands out is the D flat 7 chord that happens right after the A flat major 7, coming from when it goes to the 4. The flat 7 chord that's also dominant. That's a very curious thing to see in a major key, right? Sounds great, and it happens in a lot of jazz standards. But how do we decipher what tonality do we play over that? We can obviously approach it with our major scale, but obviously there's going to be some notes that might clash, right? We don't want to play a big flat D over a D flat 9 chord. And then if we listen to that enough, then maybe we'll like it. But
True.
But there's a way we can approach this. Let's look and break down what notes are in this chord. Okay. There's a D flat. There, I'm playing a D flat 9 with a sharp 11, really. So I'm going to spell it out in order. We got a D flat, we got an E flat, we got an F, we got a G, right? And then we got a B flat hidden in there. It's like we're not hearing it, but it's there. Or sorry, an A flat. And then we got a B flat in there. And then we also got a B natural. Yep. So there's a few notes different. Now let's look at the E flat major scale. We got E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. What notes do we need to change out of the E flat major scale to match the new chord? The D needs to turn into a D flat, obviously, and the C needs to turn to a B. So if we play an E flat major scale and just change those 2 notes, we're going to have a really good time over that D flat. So I'm going to play this chord, and Zakk's going to play a straight E flat major scale, and then you can hear a couple of the hang out on the wrong notes for a second, and then let's change them to address the chord.
Okay.
So here we go. Just rubato, you know. And here's the new one. You can hear instantly how that addresses the new harmony in a smooth way. Now we can give that scale a name, and it does have a name, but I like approaching it this way because it literally tells you what minimal adjustments to your home bass that you have to make to find out what to play over that new chord. This works in tunes like this that are diatonic in a key, old jazz standards, American songbook standards, where people were still writing music that is based, you could say it's in a key. It might not work in a tune by like Wayne Shorter where all the chords are belong to different keys, but it's a really good approach to this kind of diatonic harmony. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, this tune especially, if you really break it down, there's almost only one or I guess maybe two outside notes that are really important, and it's the B and it's the D flat. Because even the third chord, a D flat and then D half diminished to the G7.
Yep.
The G7 is technically not in the key. It's because it would be usually, this is the 3 chord, right? The G would be the 3 chord of E flat major, which is usually a minor chord, but in this case, it's turned into a dominant to tonicize the C minor. So in this case, 2 bars in, we already have a B natural that's really, really important. And that's an important note to hear and play to kind of make the changes. And again, with the D flat chord, that B is there again, and then the D flat. So those are probably the 2 most important notes for almost the entire tune, as far as anything outside that would really make those changes.
Yeah, that's a way you can start to kind of be very deliberate with note choice and start to zoom in on those little sections where you need to be very conscious of which of those notes should I be using at that point in time. And as you get your melodic sense stronger, and as you build up that ability to hear what point in the tune that those notes become important, then you'll be flying. You'll be making some great sounds over top of it. I recommend also, beyond all this, I mentioned singing with your instrument. I recommend singing all the time. Like if you put on, like we all have play-alongs and iReal Pro and backing tracks on YouTube, and Abersalds and all that stuff. Sing with it, because it really does help your mind's ear to hear choices, and your mind will instantly tell you if you're making a wrong choice.
Yeah.
And if you're playing a big fat C natural when you should be playing C sharp or whatever, your mind will know before your theory brain will know.
Right.
And it's always faster. The reason that's important is because I mentioned earlier chord scale theory, why that's important to know, but also how that can get in your way when you're having a musical moment, when like me and Zakk, when we played earlier, we're trying to be conversational with it. We don't have time to be thinking about, now I will play Lydian dominant,
right?
And to add a feeling of exuberance. We don't have time to process that. I'm literally turning into a caveman for the most part, and just trusting my ear.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important skill to retain. I say retain because I think it's an early skill in musical development that we sometimes forget about. So keep that melodic sense, and it'll do you well.
One cool thing that I like about that flat 7 dominant chord is that, most of the time the function can also, you can kind of just think of it as 4 minor. So, in the tune, you're going blah, blah, blah. You have this turnaround to 4, which is the A flat major chord, and then you have this D flat 7, but also another way to conceptualize or hear that sound is 4 major to 4 minor to 1, which is of course a sound that everyone has heard in 8 million tunes in all genres ever. Yeah. That's kind of a nice thing in improvising as well. If you are beyond basic theory and you want to kind of think about some more extended things, that flat 7 chord, this D flat 7, you could think of just playing A flat minor, melodic minor type stuff. So that's another shortcut I like.
Yeah, 4 minor's always good.
Yes, always. Bring all the sadness.
Yeah, that's right. man.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Stella by Starlight.
Yeah. Classic tune.
Classic tune. Written for the movie The Uninvited, which is about a weird spectral ghost that haunts a house.
It's my favorite kind of spectral ghost.
Exactly.
Yeah. Duo playing.
Yes, that's right. Knew there was a point to this.
Yeah, we got so stoked on the playing,
exactly.
but almost forgot.
Yeah. So duo playing is one of the funnest and hardest, and it just has every element of what makes especially this type of music fun and exciting and just really free. You know, when you have two people, especially someone that you know, at least to some degree, you're able to really connect in every way, you know, harmonically, rhythmically, you know, melodically, emotionally, in every way. And of course, the great thing about jazz is that we use these tunes as our basic form. You know, the tune and the form is our table, and we're able to, or our dish or whatever, we're able to add spices or different side dishes or whatever to that, because we know our common ground, which is this form, this tune.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's as you notice when we played, there was a very conversational aspect to the music. You know, obviously there were moments where either of us was taking a solo, but there are also a lot of times where those lines were blurred. And I think that's a really cool aspect of duo playing that you don't always get in a situation with your quartet where it's like, okay, we're going to play the head, we're going to take some solos, and then we're going to play the head again, which is great. But in this kind of form, we get to take like a more symphonic orchestral approach where we're building the arrangement as we go and listening to each other. And each time we get inspired by a small idea that jettisons us up into a new direction. And you can do this. Obviously, Zakk and I have been playing for a long time, so there's a lot of cool textures we're able to access through years of digesting music of lots of different styles, lots of different ways we can draw on harmonic and rhythmic ideas. But this is something you can do with very little experience and start to have fun with it. If you've only been playing for a few years, grab a friend and try to play duo. And what's especially fun is, you know, we're playing two guitars are instruments that are typically either accompaniment instrument or, but we're not playing the bass, we're not playing the drums, we're not playing a horn either. We're kind of a unique little guy, you know. We play chords, we play melodies, but in this situation, we float between different roles. We can play chords, we can play single notes, we can play things that rhythmically drive, we can play things that make the time feel like it's gone, and that's a really cool thing. So let's say you play alto saxophone. A good challenge is to play a duo with another horn, a trumpet, and see if you guys can play and keep the rhythmic vitality of the song, the flow, without stopping, without relying on having a bass player playing quarter notes behind you. It's a really good challenge, and you start to find simple solutions to that. The first of which I will note is just controlling your energy and centering yourself and making sure you're breathing the whole time you're playing. One of the pitfalls of early improvisers, especially, I know this as a guitar player, is once we go to start playing a crazy line, we hold our breath because our body is slightly nervous, and we hold our breath, and what that causes us to do is lose our center of pulse, and we also stop listening when we hold our breath. All our senses get lost a little bit. When we hold our breath, our body's like, hey bud, you need to start breathing, and we really are supposed to be breathing. So your body goes into this kind of small mode where it's like, all right, we're going to teach this guy to breathe, and we shut out all external influence. The idea is when we're playing, I want to be listening to what beautiful things Zakk has to say and be able to react to that. So if I'm breathing and centered, my body is able to hear and take in all those little stimuli that can enhance the performance. So keep your ears open, relax, breathe, and play it meditatively. You know, don't go too crazy right off the bat. But there's a lot to be said for just that one simple piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Breathing, it sounds funny. It's like almost too simple, right? Breathing, we all do it, but if you really notice your body when you're playing, and I'm still a culprit of this, so I'm by no means a master, but I do tend to. I had been called out by an important mentor of mine after a gig, a really important gig to me, and he texted me a whole long thing saying, "You sound great, but I really noticed that you held your breath and it really affected the way you phrase and listen and stuff." And I was like, "What?" It had never been really brought up to me. So just hearing that, it's really just an awareness thing. And once you get that awareness, you just work on it, and your body will kind of figure it out. And you have to work with your body sometimes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like what you brought up about arrangement. It's so easy for us to be in our ensembles, and especially in jazz, to play head in. Everyone does solos around and head out, but there's really no. Obviously, that's been codified and kind of put into the standard repertoire of what jazz should sound like. But to me, we can do anything. Even outside the duo setting. If you're in your combo, let's say a quartet. What if you played the head and it was immediately a drum solo? Or what if you all traded right away? Or what if you just kept playing the melody on repeat and trading the melody, like Nefertiti, Miles Davis, that kind of thing? There's so many different elements that you can arrange that go beyond just the standard head in solos, head out. So I think being cognizant of what you can do with the form and playing with that, even if it's just a texture thing. If we were just going doom 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 doom, if we were doing that the whole time, that'd be fine. But we both know that we're able to go seamlessly with in and out of maybe we're swinging, maybe we have a pedal point, maybe we're swinging but we're not doing bass lines. There's all of that different textures within time and dynamics that you can really touch upon. And I do think it's really fun to do that in a duo setting.
For sure, yeah. And we are sitting.
Yeah. Sitting setting.
Yeah. I think largely a portion of where I think this can benefit all of you is it shows you just like the diverse way jazz can present itself. We have a deep history of jazz and African American music going all the way back to the turn of the century, and even before that, like the seeds of it were being planted. In terms of where jazz is today, it draws on everything. Jazz is like a sponge. It soaks up all the music that's around it. And like now we're in an era of electronic music, hip hop, R&B, and that influence is very apparent in a lot of modern jazz. And if you look at jazz from the 70s, it was getting influenced by hard rock and early heavy metal and progressive rock. Jazz and then jazz in the 60s and 50s not only was influenced by the popular music of the time and show tunes and stuff like that, but also like the social climate, which is also influenced. So I think it's important from an artistic perspective to think about that as we're playing. Maybe you rewind and listen to me, Zakk, play, and maybe we're thinking a certain thing, but what does it mean to you when we go into certain textures? Like if we play something dissonant, does that paint a picture in your mind? Does that, it might mean something different to me than it does to you, and that's completely cool, and that's the beautiful thing about art and music. But it's good to start thinking that way because, for us to sit here and converse without words, we're just using sounds, and sometimes, like I said earlier in the segment, we're not always thinking about, now I'm playing a G-flat half demolished chord instead of the normal prescripted F7 chord. It's more about sound and texture, and we know all that stuff to get us to be able to do that in a free way. And a lot of those sounds are brought forth from emotions, which is a very hard thing to literally teach.
Right.
But if you can kind of start to create artistic connections in your mind when you listen to music that moves you, that's a way you can teach yourself to be more in touch with that and be able to access that while you're playing. An important aspect of playing that gets brought up that's unteachable is when you say, oh, that guy's a soulful player, right? But what does that mean? We can't really write that down. Can you show me the soul scale, Zakk? Please, show me what the soul scale is. But I think what that really means is when you hear a player play with full intent, they mean every note they play. You don't hear any questioning, any hesitation. We can all get to there. And I think it takes opening that artistic part of your mind up as you're digesting all this material with scales and harmony and tunes and filling your mind with all this beautiful stuff. Keep that other side of your mind open just thinking about the aesthetic choices. If I play this chord, which I have no idea what it's going to sound like, how does that sound to you? And also, if I play that chord, what will Zakk play over top of it? Yeah, you give me one. It sounded wild, right? To me, that reminds me of some funny old cartoon, and in my mind, that's what the picture that painted for me, because there were all kinds of weird sounds.
Yeah.
And like I said before, your brain, I mean, unless you have like insane perfect pitch and all this other stuff going on, it's pretty hard to like isolate each moment and think, that's this chord and I can use this set of notes over it. But if we can react emotionally, you notice that if you sat down and transcribed exactly what Zakk and I just played, some of it might not make any theoretical sense at all, but it had an emotional content and it had a direction. Where we were following each other, it made musical sense.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's really a strong concept, for lack of a better term. I like it. It's a strong concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this just goes to show you have to follow your ear. And even when you're not playing music, you should definitely follow your ear when you're listening to music, because I think especially if you're really dedicated about learning jazz or being serious about a genre of music, you tend to think, I gotta listen to only jazz like for the next 4 years and like get deep in it. But that's not really your heroes. That's not what they did. Charlie Parker was listening to Stravinsky. Miles Davis was listening to Hendrix. There's all these parallels. So go with what you like. If you like Radiohead, or if you like Dua Lipa, or if you like Bartok, whatever, follow that. And don't be afraid to listen to something else. Don't have a guilty pleasure like, I really like the Eagles, but I shouldn't tell you my friends. The Eagles are awesome. They have amazing sweeper harmonies and they have killer guitar parts. Yeah. There's something you can take from that. And I think all of our favorite musicians are people that are just into everything, and they take all influence, as a valid source of information and inspiration.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the ultimate takeaway from what Zakk and I are saying is just keep those ears open, especially if you're a youngster and you're starting out. You're in a fertile zone of your development where everything you take in will stick with you. For me, when I was a teenager, I was listening to Dream Theater, Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, and although I don't play like that today, that sticks with me.
Yep.
And it influences every musical decision I've ever made from that point, because it's what I listened to when I was developing, and then the biggest part of my development. And I'm grateful for it. I think it can come to a point, like if you're around somebody who's like a music snob, where they're like, oh, you listen to that? That's not right. That's not cool. That's not. And then you might be ashamed of it, but it's really cool. Like when you open up and be like, man, I can really see how that influenced where I'm coming from, right? And like what I play today. And when you're open to that, that's how you become a full developed musician, and you start to make a lot more connections beyond harmony, rhythm, tone, like all the fundamental aspects of music combined with all those developmental aspects of you to help you become an artist. And I think that's a really cool way to approach it, and it's very satisfying too. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for having me here and helping us out with the Straight 8 Band online masterclasses and camps. If you're watching this, you're probably watching it already on our page, but if you don't know the band, it's Straight 8 Band, and Ray Guzman runs it in Texas. And usually it would be an in-person camp. The past couple years it has been, and I was going to be one of the in-person teachers this year, but of course that got moved for next year. So we decided to do an online portion, and we're going to have some other great artists and teachers that are going to be doing their own master classes and performances. So take a look at our media and our information on when those are. Again, these are all free, and we really just want to get some good education and music out for the students that we're going to do this course, but also, of course, anyone that wants to watch it. All right.
Thank you all.
Should we play them out?
Let's play them out.
Sir.
All right. Yeah.
Oh,
man.
wait.
Oh, what? Oh, it's COVID time. So we gotta do this. Almost.
Oh, God.
Almost.
All right. Stay safe out there. Bye.
See you guys.
Awesome, man.
That's fun.